Hi, in this video, I'm going to be going over my Bonafide RS117 modified kayak. Now, I have integrated several of my previous projects into this build, and I will reference those in the narrative. That being said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I thought I would first go over the entire kayak with all my modifications and then get into specifics later in the video. So as we come around to the rear here, you see I have my shortened 46-pound Newport Vessels trolling motor along with my electrical connections and my foot pedal steering connections. Coming towards the center, you can see I have a anchor trolley. And then as I go down here underneath, that's where I have my PWM mounted, and there's the remote right there. And as I come up towards the midsection, that's where I have my foot pedal steering cables. And again on the other side. And in the center, I have my Fishfinder mounted, and all my attachments are modified using DIY T-track bolts. And as I come up here, I've got my battery box, which includes the USB charging port, a voltmeter, a 12-volt port, and then the plug-in for the battery that powers the motor. And then as I come up to the front, how I hold the battery in was I took two sections of T-track, bolted them in there, and had this leftover T-track battery case strap, and I'm using that. And because I took space away from the front, what I did was I added two pad eyes on either side and then just strung some shock cord in there just to give me a little bit of added storage. So that's the overview. Now let's get into each DIY component. Now I'm just going to show the foot pedal steering for the kayak. Has a very nice radius, almost up to 90 degrees. I'm using a 2-pulley lift system along with some impact resistance for this trolling motor. I have a cleat that's next to my seat that I can tie off the paracord if I need to once I lift the motor. I wanted to go a little bit more into detail about the trolling motor that's not in the other videos. Here I have it attached on a modified low-profile trolling motor mount, and that works out a lot better with a 24-inch length shaft. Then also I ran my wiring down the center here, and I have another one of these SAE quick connects here, so I can take everything off. Just unclip these and unscrew it, and then the whole thing comes off, which is what I wanted, something easy. And I ran the wiring through the hole right down through here. And what I did was I used a gland nut in order to mount it. And because of the thickness here of the kayak, I wasn't able to engage the nut on the back of this gland nut. So what I did was I drilled the hole very tight so it would be a press fit. And then before I put it in there, what I did was I put a big amount of goop, marine goop, on the threads of the gland nut, press it in there and let it dry, and now I have a solid connection, and it comes apart like this. So everything's really easy to come apart. And then of course my lines go into the hull through here. I removed the seat, and now you can get a better view of the PWM box that I mounted here below it, and everything clears. What I did was I ran the wires from the trolling motor to this port here. And this is a waterproof port, so the motor side plugs into here. Then on the opposite end, what I have coming out of the PWM box is to the battery power, and I also ran a port there which will connect up front, which will complete the connection. And then of course here's my remote that I showed you earlier, and everything fits in there snug. I'm going to use a little bit of a Velcro just to keep it in there, but just because of the way I have it mounted, it's not going anywhere. Now I want to move to the Fishfinder because I didn't have to drill any holes to mount it. So what I did was I went back here, and there's my power cord, and it comes back up here, and I made a cigarette type plug for it, and it goes into my battery box. And as you can see on the battery box here, I have my USB ports, my voltmeter, and then the 12-volt power source. And then this is also the plug from power out of the battery that goes in here to this other plug, which in turn goes back and powers this plug from the battery, which gives power to my PWM box and motor. And in order to hold this box down, I had these leftover T-type straps off a different kind of kayak, and so I added 2 sections of T-track here, and these just slide in, and then I just tighten them down, and it holds the battery in place. And because I took up a lot of this battery space, I added this pad eye here on each side, and then strung some new shock cord in there just to give me a little bit of storage. And so what I'm going to do now is describe the battery box. Okay, so I showed you the outside of the battery box for the plugs, and I've contained all the electronics inside the lid. So what I had done was I bought an oversized battery box for the battery I'm going to be using in this kayak. So I mounted all my electronics up in the top here, and I'll get a little close-up on that to make it a little bit easier to see. This is a view of the underside of the battery box. As you can see over here, I have my marine grade fuse box, and each one of the items I'm using on it is listed in there with a fuse. And in the center there, I have my wireless sending unit for the shutoff switch or kill switch. And then on the end here, I have my 60 amp circuit breaker that runs the trolling motor on a separate circuit than the rest of my electronics. And if you go around to the back here, this big thing on the back, that's where I have the mechanical relay for the shutoff switch. Now for this section, I wanted to demonstrate my wireless cutoff switch. And if you look to the lower right of the screen, you can see that my prop is turning. And here's my fob. And I'm going to go ahead and open the circuit, which will cut it off. And there it is. It's a cutoff, wireless. Back on. Back off. So that's it. If you have any questions, please leave them for me in the comments. Thank you.